Good evening, everyone. So tonight we're going to have a discussion about Japanese pistols and carbines from World War II, and some of the actual pistols actually go back to pre-World War I, and same with some of the rifles we have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the rifles, and then I'm going to work into the pistols this way. Okay. So to understand the Japanese carbine, you need to understand the top rifle I have here, and that rifle is the Type 38. This is the general rifle that the Japanese Army and Navy had prior to World War I. Now, this rifle here is Type 38. Is when they say the Japanese did a lot of numbering based off of the year of the current emperor. So the year 38 references the 38th year of the emperor's reign, and at that time, that was actually equates to 1905. For that particular emperor. So this rifle came into service in 1905. It fires 6.5 Japanese ammo, and you know, pretty standard to other rifles from the World War I era. Bolt action, based on a Mauser system design. 5 rounds internal, and you know, lightweight. But as far as the ammo goes, but you know, when you're thinking about the Japanese in the Pacific or anywhere else, at that time, even the United States, prior to the Spanish-American War, had the Lee rifle, which was a 6.5 ammo. So it wasn't like an uncommon round for nations to be utilizing. It was easy, not a big recoil, although it was a very long rifle, and even longer when you put a bayonet on it. And if you think of the stature of the basic Japanese soldier, it's almost as tall as he is. But this rifle served them all the way through up into the beginning of World War II with the United States. While they're in China in the 30s, this is what they're using. So they got their money's worth out of this design in the rifle. Now, as you can see how big and long it is, this is a general infantryman rifle. But if you have another occupation in the military, be it you're in transportation, you're in the artillery, you're an armor, you're an engineer, or something to that effect, that's way too big and way too long for you. So, the Japanese created a carbine version. Also, for their cavalry, too. Again, very similar, exact same action, 19-inch barrel, fired the exact same ammunition, just smaller version. Now, this rifle in particular was made in 1920, so it's post-World War I, but pre-World War II. The Japanese used these in the Pacific Islands as well as in China, and the Marines, when they first ran into this in Guadalcanal, they loved it. The Marines would take these, and the Marines would use these when they went out on patrol, because it was smaller and lighter than their Springfields they had. So the Marines actually did enjoy this. It's a great little shooting rifle, and it's super lightweight. The other rifle I have up here is the cavalry carbine. Now again, both of those Type 38, Type 38 rifle, Type 38 carbine, both designed same timing, okay? 1905. This rifle is the Type 44. The Type 44 was designed in 1911. Again, 44th year of the Emperor's reign, 1911. And they decided they wanted something a little bit different for their cavalry, because the problem they were running into, cavalry, you have a horse, you got a rifle, you got a sword. With that, now you need to carry a bayonet. They're over-weaponizing their cavalry, and they realized that they need a different rifle, something that had the bayonet already attached to it. So now, it's one less thing he has to put on his belt, because it's already attached to the rifle. But again, same action, same ammunition, okay? Also, these did end up not only in China, but in the Pacific. When troops were transferred to Pacific Islands, they took their rifles with them. Needless to say, American soldiers, American Marines, you know, this is a nice little war prize. You know, these were very popular. You know, after battles, they'd see these laying around, they're like, oh, that's nice, I'm gonna take that and bring that home. Which is why you do see a lot of these with mums on them still. If it usually has a mum, they were picked up war prizes off the islands. If it was post-war, a lot of times the mums are ground off. So to find something with a mum, good chance that was pre-end of the war, sent back home or hidden somewhere to get sent back home. All right, put that up there for now. Now, the Japanese also had realized too, while they were fighting in China, that their 6.5 millimeter round, even though it was lightweight, it's easy to fire, not heavy recoil, it didn't have knockdown power, it didn't have range power, it didn't have penetration power, especially in comparison to like an American 30-06, which is where they started to design their Type 99 rifle, which then goes into production during the war use. Similar to the rifles, the Japanese had their pistols, again, designed not with the same philosophy that a lot of the Western nations had, okay? The first pistol they designed was a revolver, okay? And also something to keep in mind, 1905, or they're designing that rifle. You gotta remember, 1864, they're still a shogun nation. They're still samurais. That is their culture. So when you think you're advancing 50, 60 years, and they're developing rifles, they're developing pistols, you're going from sword to you're developing your own modern firearms. That's a big gap in one lifetime. It's in a generation. Someone that was born as a child living under a samurai or a shogun, now you're developing weapons in an armory, modern weapons. It's a big jump quick, okay? So in 1887, the Japanese start developing, they want to develop their own pistol, because up to this point they're buying all their weapons from Western countries. They're like, we want to make our own weapon. So they decide they want to start looking at developing, and again, this is where the Japanese just didn't decide, we're not going to clone something. We're going to look at what's out there on the market, and we're going to clone pieces, but also make it better. So this isn't like just a clone of a Webley or a clone of a S&W number 3 Russian or something like that. They looked at all the various pistols out there from the various countries, the French, the British, the Russians, the Americans, and they started to look at what they also had in their arsenal. At this point, the Japanese are using a lot of Smith & Wesson number 3 Russians, and they have a breakdown. It's a top-grade pistol, and they're like, you know, we like that. Let's stay with that. We know it. So that's incorporated from there. For the other part of the pistol, they're looking at some of the French designs. And for some of the French designs they were looking at, and bear with me while I go to my notes, there was two pistols in particular, and they're looking at how the mechanisms and the hammers and everything else works. Now, the interesting thing with these pistols are, the earlier pistols had very light stamping on them. This one is under 10,000. This one, which you come up afterwards, is a higher serial number up in the 41s. That one, you'll see it has deeper stamping on it. They only made about 61,000 of these in total. And they started to make these, they started to go into production, late 1800s, let's say 1890s. They started to get these things into production, okay? They stopped production in about 1926. There's a major earthquake in Tokyo, destroys the arsenal. At that time, too, they're already realizing this is kind of antiquated and outdated. We're going to move away from it anyway. But that really was the detonate to this pistol, was that earthquake. But they did refurbish them up in the 30s again. They had the parts, they had the technology, so they took pistols that were getting old and long in the tooth, sent them back to the factories, back to the arsenals to be refurbished, and on those you'll notice they have a different bluing, and also they changed the grips. If you ever see these pistols and they've got like a serrated grip, like this, that's a factory refurb. If you find them with these earlier checkered grips, that was this one didn't go to the factory, okay? Now the other neat thing about these pistols is, again, how they breaks down. You see that how that pops up? That's your ejection system, okay? So if this was loaded, I already fired my shells, whoop, already makes it easy for them to pop out, drops down, easy to reload again, okay? Now, the other neat thing about this pistol is how you can clean it, you know? All you have to do is if you pull forward on the trigger guard, like so. I'm going to do it down here so it opens, and bang, you're in your pistol. It gets everything inside, and it's easy for you to get in there and clean. And if you pull this off, it just pops up. You can get to all the mainsprings. Very easy, very quick to get to. Close it back up, put your trigger guard back, and you're ready to go. Now, the downsides to this pistol. It's double action. There is no single action on here. Now, single action is great. Single action allows you to cock back, aim, look at your target, look at your sight picture, think about how you feel, think about what you want to have for lunch later, think about how you're feeling about everything in the universe, take a good shot, and hit what you're aiming at. This, double action, a little bit more to it. Also, accuracy. Now here's another problem with this pistol. Watch what happens here. See how I keep spinning this? It doesn't lock up. So if you fire a round or two and you hit this, you could now be sitting on an empty cylinder. That wasn't really too much of a deal breaker for the Japanese because to them, the pistol was an afterthought. Western cultures, pistol was your go-to. Japanese culture, this is your go-to. It's not that, it's this. You had a pistol, chances are you had one of these. You were an NCO, you were an officer, okay? And if push came to shove, you're there, this is a status symbol. You're supposed to be, it's there in case you need it, but you're there to inspire men, you're there to lead men, you're there to, get people to do things. This is going to be more aspiring to your troops than this, okay? And this, in the Japanese mentality, was your number one go-to. Not that. And if also, with that design, this, look at other pistols, European pistols, they're designed for you to be able to reach out and hit somebody, 25, 30 yards, 50 yards. This is up close. This is personal. If you are using this, you are in trouble. And that's why they didn't mind it as you're basically just taking 6 shots and dumping them up close. You're going to hit them. You may not hit them everywhere you're aiming, but you're going to hit them. And it's just to get you out of trouble. Okay? Now, that pistol was their go-to pistol until they got to their Type 14s that they started to develop. But the pistol didn't go out of service. Okay? Instead of being issued out to officers, it got issued out to NCOs, the cavalry, other troops. So its life continued even when the Japanese officer corps moved away from it. Now, an interesting thing about the Japanese officer corps was you were expected to purchase your own pistol. Your pistol was not given to you by the government. Rifles all had the mum on it, which was a symbol of the emperor. This one has a mum on it. Okay, it's right up here. That showed you that belonged to the emperor. You were being given this, you were given a gift by the God Emperor. Here is a rifle from the God Emperor for you to use to defend the country. Japanese pistols do not have a mum on them because they're not property of the Emperor. They're property of the officer that bought it. Now, the other thing at the time was the Japanese military, again, prior to World War I, World War II, they were buying all their weapons from Europe. Officers were told, okay, here's a list of approved pistols. You can go to the Army store, kind of like their version of a PX, and there were choices. And you could purchase one of those pistols, and if you purchased one of those pistols out of your own pocket, and it was on our approved list, that's what you could carry. So, Western European pistols were very popular in the Japanese military. Also, some of these pistols would cost more money than the pistol they could get from Europe. So, not all officers are rich, especially a young lieutenant who also has to buy a sword and everything else. They're going to, and remember, this was your go-to. You're going to spend all your money on this. And whatever I have left over, I'll buy something over here. What's the cheap discount pistol? That's the one I'll buy, because that's my go-to. So, that's one thing you always got to keep in mind with the Japanese is the mentality of this over this. So now, fast forward, early 20th century, Japanese realized automatic pistols are the way to go, get away from a revolver, so they start to develop the Type 14. Okay? And the Type 14, instead of being, oh, I should talk about the cartridge. The cartridge for the revolver is a unique 9mm to Japan. It is very similar to S&W 38. It's not regular 9mm. Regular 9mm will not work in the weapon. And Smith Wesson 38 won't work in it. You have to actually do stuff to the casings to get it to work. So it is a very hard round to find, okay? The other problem that happened post-World War II, everyone came home with these weapons as war trophies and prizes. Oh, I found this on a battlefield or wherever. World War II ends, the Germans, well, a lot of their factories, they keep making weapons and bullets and Walther and now they keep making stuff. The Japanese stopped. And since all of their ammunition was unique to their weapons, nobody was making it anymore. So once the ammo that came home with the US soldiers dried up, you either needed someone that knew how to reload and make the shells to the right sizing and caliber, and there were a few companies that started to make it 50s, 60s, but they never did it at the same level as, you know, the regular run-of-the-mill ammunition. Like today, you go to the store, you can find, you know, 30-06, you can find 223. Go try to find some Krag on the shelf. You're going to be hard-pressed. You're going to be even harder pressed to find some of this stuff, okay? So if you do find some of these pistols, some of them are in remarkably good shape because they haven't been fired in 30 or 40 years because nobody can find the bullets. So if you can find the ammunition, you can probably find a pistol or a rifle in really good condition for not that much, which is also a deterrent to some people from buying them, because if you're not a hard collector, I can't fire it, they're not interested in purchasing it. So definitely they're out there and they're available. Like this one that I picked up, it's a low serial number. It is 9933, so under the first 10,000. And it's in remarkable condition, because chances were it hasn't been fired since World War II before I got my hands on it. So again, let's fast forward now to the Type 14. The Type 14, again, falls under the new Emperor coming in, and because the original Emperor for those rifles. So this one is Type 14, and the Type 14, I lost it, is around 1925. So again, it is, pick up this, I'll start with this one that the stand was nice enough to bring. This is the earlier pistol, okay? Has a little circle trigger guard. You got your cocking mechanism back here. But the thing about the pistol is everyone, oh wow, look, it's a Luger. No, it's not a Luger, okay? It's a very Japanese pistol. The Japanese put a lot of thought into the general design of the pistol. The lines. How the lines are on the grip, how the circle, and the circle has also the lines. The circles in the back, the flow, the feel. This is a good harmony and symmetry to this pistol. Very Japanese. They put a lot of thought into the little details of this pistol, how it looks, how it feels in the hand. Comes up natural. It's very easy to aim and shoot. Low recoil. The pistol ammunition for this, again, unique Japanese round, 8mm by 22, bottleneck, very close to a .380. Low recoil. But again, size of the gun, length of the barrel, very light recoil, easy to shoot. 8 rounds, 8-round magazine, okay? I'm going to pick up mine to play with and monkey with. Now, locks open to the rear like this. When you fire it, this comes back every time. That is your bolt coming back. Now, one thing interesting to the Japanese, they never felt the need for a slide lock. The slide locks to the rear automatically when the last round is fired, letting you know it's empty and you need to put in a new magazine. But when you go to eject the magazine, it automatically slides forward again, forcing you to recock it after you put a new magazine in order to chamber the next round. And again, had there been a round in here, I would have let it go, it would have slid forward, and I'd be ready to go. Now, the other thing the Japanese ran into, when they were in Manchuria, they realized it's cold, and you're trying to shoot with gloves. they were having a hard time getting their finger inside this trigger guard. So in the late 30s, they elongated the trigger guard so you could shoot it with gloves. It was easier for you to get it in there with a glove on, okay? Then the other thing that is interesting, the Japanese, they weren't so hung up on the fact that it was a lightweight round. It was the issues the troops were running into while deploying the weapon. Not the round, but the deploying of it. So we elongate, make the trigger guard bigger, and for some reason, they kept losing, troops had a habit of hitting this, and the magazine at the time, the early versions, would just drop right out. Most magazines pistols came with two magazines. They're numbered, matching the gun. Your primary and your secondary. The secondary has a little dot above the number. This way you know that's the spare magazine. It's not uncommon to find a pistol on the market with a matching magazine, but it's the spare, because the first magazine was lost, especially on an earlier pistol. So what the Japanese did was, they put a little retention spring in the front here, and they put a cut in the front of the magazine to catch that, so that when you eject it, you actually have to pull down on it to get it out. You just wouldn't drop out of the gun anymore. Now, another interesting thing with the Japanese pistol is, on this, at first, there was no safety in the original design. They put a safety on here as an afterthought, okay? And that's up here. Now, most pistols, the safeties are in the back. They're easy to get to with your shooting hand. This you cannot get to with your shooting hand. You actually have to use your offhand to engage the safety. By flipping it back like this, that's on safe. Put it forward, now it's on fire, okay? But the interesting thing with the Jap safety too is, when it's on, it locks up the gun. You cannot operate it in any way, shape, or form. You can't even charge the handle. Now, the symbols on the front, fire and safe, whatever, aren't really fire and safe. The front one is actually closest to flame, is what it means. And back here is be at peace. So, flame and be at peace. That's what your weapon has. The other interesting thing that the Japanese started to do with the Type 14 was, they were putting on the year and the month the pistol was made for that emperor. So this pistol was made in the 19th year of the emperor, 5th month, which equates to 1944. So this pistol was made in May of 1944. Okay. As you can see here, this has a very deep, more ornate cocking handle. It's got 3 circles. Like I said, the Japanese put a lot of thought into the lines and the circle elements that are inside the weapon. As the war progresses, they got to start cutting some corners. They went to just a solid knob, straight pullback. Still has some detail to it, but not as pretty, not as delicate. Also, you can see by the bluing, this is an early pistol. It's got a much better, look at the bluing job on this one. It's not as nice. They're trying to pump these things out. So you're seeing some of the workmanship degrade, okay? That down. The other thing with the Japanese pistols, as they were going, they really started to get very, very bare bones as the war goes on, just like they were with the rifles. So if you come up and you see look at the pistols, you'll see the differences in the craftsmanship. Things are starting to get a lot more rough. When you get into late 44, 45, these pretty grips are gone. They're straight wood slabs, both on here and the Type 94. And you can really see the craftsmanship degrade tragically. That also led to a lot of Americans giving it a bad rap, which I'll talk about at the end. The other pistol we have up here that the Japanese developed is the Type 94, which really gets a bad rap. Now the Type 94, that pistol they started to develop around 1934, okay? And that's the year for 94. It is a 6-round magazine only. It's about half a pound lighter than the Type 14. And it was designed not so much for general officers, but this was also, they thought about this one a little differently. They thought this one to be more of like a support weapon for tankers, paratroopers, people with confined work areas. So a little bit easier for them to utilize and get to. It's small, as you can see, my hand, my pinky finger is underneath the magazine well. So if you have a big hand, this is just gonna just vanish into your hand, okay? But it is very similar to a lot of CCW weapons you see on the market today, as far as size and capacity go. It also fires the same bullet, so that's also very nice for the Japanese. Again, marked for the month and the year that it was made. This one's actually made in 43, September of 43. So this one's made earlier than this one that I have, and you can see it's a little bit nicer made. Now, an interesting thing about this pistol is where the sear is. The sear is right here on the outside of the weapon. This was a conscious decision by the Japanese. They had specific requirements from the Army for size and weight and everything else. And the only way they were going to be able to fit inside of that, they had to put the sear out here where it was semi-exposed, or very exposed. Now, they did have a better safety on this. It's back here. Back, you can engage and disengage it with your shooting hand, so you don't have to use two hands to do it. The other thing is this is a striker firing pin system. This is a hammer fire, so it's more reliable. The other thing the Japanese were having a lot of problems with in the Type 14 was firing pin breakage up front, early on especially. And I actually have a broken firing pin up here in a bag that if you want to come up and look at it. What would tend to happen is the way that the Type 14 operates, when the bolt goes to the rear and the firing pin goes back, it comes up and it catches on the sear. And that's what holds it in place until you pull the trigger and it drops and it goes forward to engage the round. That was the weak point that was breaking on a lot of Japanese pistols. So they used to issue the Type 14 with spare firing pins. So that this way, if yours broke, you could easily, quickly field repair your pistol. The Type 94 didn't suffer from that, based on improved pistol, an improved firing mechanism, hammer as opposed to striker. So they thought a lot differently, and again, the safety in that was an afterthought. This one they just developed up front. It was always part of the design of the gun. But that sear on the side, what it does allow you to do is this. So again, no slide lock. You gotta eject the magazine. But if you are to push down and the safety's off here, you ready to click? That would have discharged this firearm if it had been loaded. Just by pushing on the side of the weapon. Again, the Japanese didn't see that as a deal breaker because they knew it was part of the design, and if you have the safety engaged, if you push that down and you get that to go off, you've broken your safety. So you really got to actively try to do this, okay? Now, of course, rumors run wild at the end of World War II and post-war, and starts to get a moniker, oh, this was a suicide gun, and, well, first off, there's no Japanese soldier who's ever going to surrender to any American with a weapon in his hand. Whether it's pointed at the Japanese soldier or pointed at the American like this, it ain't going to happen. He went towards any American soldier, there are going to be about 10 or 15 Garands pointed at him, and if he didn't put it down, he was going to be balls. So, those are rumors and stories. You actually have more reports and documented reports of issues and problems with the Type 14 than you did the Type 94, okay? Even with this exposed safety. They knew about it, it wasn't going to go off. Most of the time, the Japanese didn't have a round in the chamber, and if they did, they had the safety on. So, it was not a deal breaker to them. Again, easy to shoot, nice profile, again, very much like a CCW pistol, all right? Now, as I said, the swords was your primary go-to if you had a pistol. The other people that had pistols and swords were Japanese police. This is actually a police sword. You can see it's a real small, it's a short sword, but it's a real sword. I mean, this thing's got a hard edge to it. I mean, it's sharp. This is like legit. And many a downed airman in Japan would have come across this sword and pistol pointed at his face by a Japanese police officer. And chances are it was Type 26, and this sword is what was pulling him out of a barn or a rice paddy somewhere. The holsters I have up here, again, I'll talk about the revolver one first. Again, hard clamshell. You can see Japanese, they didn't really vary much in their development. You can tell they're all from the same family. All right. This was the one for the Type 26 revolver. Opened up, had a place for your cleaning rod right here on the side. Here's your cleaning rod. And had a place for shells right here. Here's your shell compartment. So you can put your shells in there. Okay. For your Type 14, again, hard shell cover. This here, this little flap would open up. This is where you put your box of ammo. Here was where your spare firing pin would go. In here, there's a little loop, and that is where your cleaning rod would go, with your pistol inside. So everything was self-contained inside the holster. Okay. Japanese lanyards, universal across the pistols, just like this. Doesn't matter if it was the 14, the 26, the 94. Here's that. Holsters typically were made of leather, but they also made them out of a rubberized canvas. This is a rubberized canvas one, but it's exactly the same as that one. Okay. Going downside to these tended to harden up a lot with age. If you go up and touch this one later, you can see it's hard. It's like a rock. Now, this here, this canvas one, this is a reproduction of a type of holster for the Type 94. Again, nice, lightweight, shoulder holster. If I was in a tank, this would be great for me. They also did them in leather, but very similar design. Okay. Now, post-war, Americans are bringing these things home. They're all over the place. GIs, Marines, brought them home. They still have ammo that they brought home with them so they can fire them. Ruger takes a Type 14, takes it apart and reverse engineers it, and creates the Ruger 22 pistol. This came from this, which is also interesting because Americans gave this a very bad rap, but love this. This comes from this. Now, another reason why this got a bad rap was when the ammo started to dry up. Two things. One, this also has a very bizarre magazine feed. It doesn't feed straight up. It feeds on an angle, so it can jam very easily. Okay, a 45 isn't going to jam up on you as fast as this thing is. So it already has an X against it to begin with. I've noticed my Type 14 is very, very finicky when it comes to the ammunition we use. If you find commercial ammunition, it's usually 82 grain is what I want to say the over-the-counter is. That will not work with 82 grain ammo. You need like 105, 115 to make that one. You put that in there, functions like a champ. Cycles beautifully. Put the 82 over-the-counter stuff that you can find on the market. One shot, next shot stovepiping, next shot it doesn't even clear the mag. It's a hot mess. That immediately leads to tons of the reviews and the things you read all over the internet about that pistol. Because again, the user's having a horrible experience. It's not the gun, it's the ammo. That's what's causing your problem. I will say this. Oh, this thing's like a garbage can. It'll fire whatever you put in here. The 82 stuff, 105, 98 grain, 115. It works like a champ. I mean, it's beautiful. That very, very finicky. Very finicky. One thing I will say also about this pistol, it does have dual recoil springs. So again, the lighter weight rounds, dual recoil springs, if you have the right ammunition in it, and how it fits your hand. As you can see, your hand fits on this much better than your hand fitting on this. But even, like I said, understand what it is. But for a shooting pistol, if you have the right ammunition, it is very, as soon as you put it up, you're almost on target. It fits in your hand nicely. It's a fun ride. And again, finding the right ammunition to use in it and understanding that it's very finicky. The other downside to the Japanese pistols are they have multiple factories making them, and they're made over a variety of years. Parts are not necessarily interchangeable. Firing pins are not interchangeable from one factory to the other, one version of the pistol to another. So early pistols have a different firing pin and a different bolt setup than the later pistols. They're not interchangeable. So that's another problem you run into, especially after war, private market now. You've got to be very careful the pistol you got. Does it have all the original parts? Now the Japanese are very good about numbering everything on it, so it's very easy to see if everything in there is the original pistol or not. But if it's not, it may not operate properly because if somebody put the wrong thing in there after market, it's not going to operate properly. Which is also a problem if you run into trying to find, let's say something does break on you, trying to find the right piece that will make it work for you again. Again, the Type 94 is a little bit more forgiving in that, but not the 14s. Any questions?
They have a spare magazine in the holster?
Yes, yes, you could, yes. It would actually just drop right down in here. That's where the spare, you get the pistol, you get your spear, you get everything in here. The 94 actually has a cutout in the holster for the second magazine. That also came with 2 magazines. Okay. Again, this one was a little bit more durable and you could bang it up a lot more. This one, very, very finicky. This, again, it's a revolver. It's going to operate like a revolver. It's going to serve, a revolver is not going to fail on you. If it fails on you, it's because either you haven't cleaned it or you got horrible ammunition. This, like I said, wrong ammo, it's just not going to work. Any questions?
Did the 38 see any service in the Russo-Japanese War? And if not, how different was it from what they were using?
They were using the Type 30, and it's very similar. It's, again, the Type 30 was probably more what they utilized in the Russo-Japanese War. I'm not exactly sure if this got any service in the Russo-Japanese War. I know the carbines, probably the Type 44 sure didn't, but this was definitely what they were using in World War I, and it is a Type 30 bayonet. So the bayonet for the Type 30 fit the 38 and fit the Type 99. So the bayonet rolled all the way through.
And how did the nomenclature change? Because 38 was 38th year of the Emperor, and
Yes.
the 99 wasn't made in the 99.
Yes. So, because again, you got to remember, of the current emperor. So just because it was 38 and the new one was 99, it wasn't that year of a difference. It was the 38th year of that emperor's reign is when that one was made. He dies. The new emperor starts. Again, and then also too, for the Type 99, it wasn't necessarily the year of his reign. They did it differently off of the year of the Japanese calendar. So again, it starts to change a little bit there too. So the Japanese, they didn't necessarily stick to one method of naming everything. Also, very similar to how during World War II, how the Americans, everything was the M1. You had the M1 rifle, the M1 carbine, you had the M1 helmet, the M1 this, the M1 that, the M1 this. The Japanese, if you look online, you go Japanese Type 98, Type 99. You're going to see about 52 different things come up, from canteens to helmets to tanks to airplanes. Everything was a type 90 this, Type 90 that. So it was very hodgepodge on how they did it.
How do the calibers on those compare with the calibers on the standard issue for GIs? And
Definitely undergone. Like I said, this is closer to 380 versus a 45. This.
The rifles?
I'm sorry?
Same with the carbines?
Yeah, the carbine, both of these the 38 and both of the carbines fired the Japanese 6.5, which was way under count when you compare it to a 30-06. It's lightweight, it's got less recoil, it's easy to shoot, and even on the carbine, because it's that smaller cartridge, due to the you lose the length on the rifle, you're usually going to start sucking it up in recoil. You don't, because it's such a lightweight cartridge.
Why would they do that?
That's what they just designed back in 1905. 1905, it was a good enough cartridge. It's similar to Craig.
But
So-
they modernized the pistols, so why didn't they up the...
When you think about it, they modernized their pistol. They went from something that's Smith & S&W 38 to 380. It really didn't make a big jump. All they did was make it automatic,
Right.
or semi-automatic. That was their big jump. As far as the weight of the round, they really didn't go heavy. And part of that goes back to, again, what their World War I experience was. Their World War I experience was garrisoning German colonies in the Pacific. They didn't have like a Western Front experience where you needed a weapon that had knockdown power, reliability, range, distance, all the key factors that American weapons had. They didn't have that. And it wasn't until they really got into fighting in China that they started to see, hey, maybe this doesn't cut it. And that's when they start to design their Type 99, which is more on par with an American rifle round. But they didn't do that. They didn't go back and redesign their pistols. And that was just for the Type 99. And these, they issued all the way up to the end of the war. They had it. You know, most of the troops in China, all the way, they kept fighting with the 38s.
As far as the islands fighting jungle warfare, would you want the highest caliber possible? That would give you an advantage, right? A shorter weapon with a high caliber.
You know,
Wouldn't they see they were at a disadvantage?
You know, I don't know about that. Think of a carbine, U.S. Army carbine. It's a smaller round, it's a lighter round, it's got a higher magazine.
I don't know what the round is.
Yeah, so it's a 30 carbine. It's nowhere near the knockdown and length power of an M1 Garand. American GIs loved that because it was lightweight, it was easy to carry through the jungle on patrol. I don't need to be reaching out and hitting somebody at 300 yards in the jungle. When you're on jungle patrol, I'm not going to see you until you're right there. Your chances are in the jungle, you're going to walk right up on each other. I don't need distance. I just need something that I can hit you with. Yes.
We like the 45 because it has tremendous knockdown and death-dealing power.
Yes.
With these smaller calibers, you don't necessarily want to kill the guy because if you make him a wounded guy, there's going to be at least one other guy who's going to have to take care of him.
Oh, 100%. And also you got to remember too, the people that had these were officers, NCOs, leaders. This was a status symbol. I have a pistol. I'm in charge of somebody if I got a pistol, right? I'm surrounded by guys with rifles. I'm not the guy expected to shoot somebody. I'm the guy that's expected to motivate everybody. And I'm going to motivate them not with this, but with this. And again, if I got into trouble, my go-to isn't going to be to reach into my holster and pull out my pistol. My go-to is going to be reach into my saber, my scabbard, and pull out my sword. And think about when you saw bonsai attacks in the Pacific. Japanese officers, they were charging the Americans with this in hand, not that. This. Because one, it is kind of scary. Some whack job running at you with a freaking sword. You're like, really? You know, what the hell is this guy on? But also, you know, this will hurt somebody. It's got a good edge to it. But this was the Japanese mentality. This was my go-to, not this. So I wasn't thinking about, I have knockdown power. I got to shoot him 2 or 3 times with this caliber round versus a 45 that'll take somebody down with 1 round. Because they're not thinking that. They're thinking, I got the sword. I got to get them with the sword.
Was the Type 38 used during the invasion of the Philippines or the Type 99?
I believe it was the 38 early because the 99s were just coming into production and they may not have gotten out to all the frontline troops yet. No, you know what, they might have been. It could now 41, early 41, the Type 99s are coming in. It would have been by unit, depends upon the unit. But if you look at, I think something like the units that land like in Siam and go down into Burma, they're still carrying 38s. And again, it's one of those things, it's a brand new weapon. Think about when the Americans went from the M14 to the M16. Not everybody had M16s overnight. It was as units were getting those weapons issued to them, you were getting the new weapon and you were handing in your old. There were still tons of American units that had M14s when the M16s were coming into play. And a lot of it goes to where you're stationed, what your status of your unit. You know, are you an elite unit? You're going to get the newer weapon. You're not an elite unit, you're gonna stay with your 38 for a while. So that also has a lot to do. But 38 saw service all the way through World War II. Even though the Japanese were eventually, hey, we're gonna phase out this and we're gonna go to this new Type 99 with a higher, impact bullet and, larger caliber. It never fully came into play. They were making 38s through the end of the war. They were issuing out 6.5 ammunition all the way to the end of the war. And especially as they started, things were turning against them, they realized we just can't shelf. These are still good weapons. Hand them out. We need them. We just can't shelf them because we don't have enough capacity to keep to make what we need to replace it. We were strangling the Japanese pretty hard. The American Navy succeeded in what the German Navy never could. The German Navy tried to starve out England and couldn't do it. The United States did. The United States looked at what the Germans did, and we turned it into an art form. And by the end of the war, the U.S. Navy had run out of targets. There were no more ships. They were sinking saipans and little wooden dinghy boats. Because those were the only targets left because the United States submarine force did such a good job in World War II. And by doing that, they were strict. They had no food, they had no rubber, they had no oil, they had no materials. They were an island nation. We did what the Germans tried to do to England couldn't do. And the Japanese were feeling it, and that's why all their weapons, everything starts to go so last ditch. They don't have the resources to make